Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and everyone, hey out there, I hope you're doing well, and welcome into another edition of Computer America. So today on the show, if you're unfamiliar with what happens on the last Wednesday of the month, then hey, let me introduce you to none other than Scott Schober. He is our resident cybersecurity expert. We'll be talking about a lot of things, including a bunch of different stories, a bunch of data breaches, how to keep yourself safe, things that you need to know about when it comes to cybersecurity, because trust us, Scott does this for a day job and keeps up to date and gives speeches and things like that, and I keep a pretty good finger on the pulse of this whole thing, and you don't hear about all the stories. There's a lot to go over, and I can think of no one better to go over it with than Scott Schober. So everyone, before we get started, a couple of things, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find the show notes, link to any websites that we mention, any articles that we talk about, any videos that we show, anything that we mentioned on today's program can be found at computeramerica.com. While you're there, also check out the articles. We have some new reviews up, and we have some new reviews coming up here shortly. We'll let you know when those are published. And and of course the live video feed, you can of course check that out with the chat room as well. So with that being said, everyone, welcome into the program one more time, and why don't we go ahead and just get started. So waiting ever so patiently in the wings is none other than Scott Schober. He is of course owner and operator of Berkeley Varitronics, and of course, like I said, resident Computer America cybersecurity expert. So Scott, welcome back onto Computer America. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Great to be back there, Ben.
Happy to have you. And of course, before we get started, pleasantries. Hopefully you're doing well. Everything's going well on your end?
Yes, everything's doing well.
Perfect. Okay, so with that being said, why don't we go ahead and first introduce yourself for anyone new who may be listening to the program. Give a little bit of your background and why you're so interested in keeping people safe, on computers.
Absolutely. Well, I'm running a 47-year-old company, and we focus primarily on developing wireless threat detection tools that are used by many government agencies and security companies to stop wireless threats. And I deal a ton of different stories, research, interviews, writing, all about cybersecurity and how you can keep safe. As many of listeners may have heard, I launched a book called Hacked Again, and it was my true story of being hacked and compromised and all the things that I've learned in the process of it. And just finished up writing a second book, Cybersecurity is Everyone's Business, and it really deals with how cybersecurity now affects everyone on the planet in one fashion or another. And some of the topics, hopefully, that are selected today will kind of delve into that and see how it really spans the gamut, and it's important for all of us to do our best to try to keep safe these days.
Perfect. And of course, congratulations on the second book. Looking forward to reading it. And and of course, let us know when. I remember talking about last month. Did you say it was available, or you sent it to the editor last month, or?
Yeah, it's going through the kind of the what I call the cleanup, because I'm not the best speller and grammar and everything else. So that's editorial development and all the other fun stuff before it goes. And I would say probably late summer time frame. It'll hit the bookstores and of course Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all the other fun.
That's a lot of spelling errors, but okay, no, that's good.
It takes a long time. I'm surprised how long it takes to get a book out. I think it's because there's so many people in the processes, but I've learned a great deal in the first book. It took a total of a little more than 2 years from start to the very finish till it was actually for sale on a bookshelf, if you can imagine that. This one's going to be closer to about a year, but amazing process and learned a lot.
Yeah, no, we had a correspondent on the show who wrote a lot of the, not for, I think it was the Idiot's Guide. He wrote a lot of the Idiot's Guide for like operating systems and things like that.
Yep.
And, he didn't have those woes because he would just put out, hey, it's the 13th edition of my book. And he'd, make a couple of updates and change some links and he'd be off to the races. But yeah, I mean, it's a full-time job, really, to kind of be a writer and deal with your book and that kind of thing. So again, congratulations. That's of course a huge feather in your cap. And okay, but with that being said, looking forward to that. And why don't we go ahead and get to today's topic? So for anyone out there who may be new to this segment, of course, Scott Schober, he sends over a bunch of different articles that we'll include in the show notes. But yeah, they're just tech and security issues of the day. And luckily, I can safely say we have not covered any of these on the show yet. So these are all going to be fresh. So why don't we go ahead and talk about one of our favorite, and of course, how do I put this delicately? We have family, and of course, used to work for the show. Aaron Crossman, currently living in Colorado. Colorado, huge with the medical marijuana, of course, recreational marijuana. It's like I think Times put out an article saying that the medical marijuana / recreational marijuana industry was going to boom in like the next 10 years, and it almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. We have seen so many marijuana-based companies, I guess, spring up or sprout up, and they all want to make a dime. They all want to, get in on the ground floor of this. But at the same time, it's an industry that is going to be heavily influenced by data and, of course, users and, in some cases, users who legally cannot be using. You can see where medical-wise or recreational-wise, something this sensitive could be, well, sensitive. You found this article here, CISO Mag, and I just learned CISO the other day because we were doing an article about, it was like cyber something or other. I'm sure you can explain it. But CISO Mag, what is this article you found?
Yeah, this one here I thought was kind of, it caught my eye, not because I'm a user of cannabis or anything.
Don't worry, we won't get you in trouble, but I understand.
But just the fact that it's such a, as you really mentioned, well, it's such a hot topic. Everybody's talking about it. It's a very political topic, and it's also a medical topic, and I think it's very personal to many people, whether it's got medicinal purposes, so on and so forth. But even that it spans over to everybody that is tied to this had some information compromised, and not just the typical, I have my name compromised or anything like that, but when it's tied even more so with diagnosis, medical diagnosis, notes, allergies, all these other associated things to a particular breach, that's when it becomes very valuable to hackers. And I think we've talked about this numerous times on prior shows, but that's where the concern is, because so much information now is in these giant troves of databases in the dark web where you can buy information, and now you can take other compromised information and put it together. So if they have, Ben's name, his address, and now they have different types of information such as your medical diagnosis and different things from another report that's got your credit card, and something else that's got your Social Security, so on and so forth. When that's all packaged together, the value, it goes up tenfold. And that's where the real concern is, especially anything to do with the field of health and medical. They're constantly refocusing, this is hackers, toward garnishing as much of that information that they can do. And in this particular case, it's also important to point out who actually got in there and compromised the information is still under investigation. They don't know. But it's more recent information. Information is certainly a lot more valuable when it happened in this calendar year as opposed to, a credit card that was compromised from a target in 2013. So there's a great relevance to getting that information, repackaging it, and selling it quickly for top dollar, and that's one of the big concerns with this particular case.
This particular case, though, it is a bit different because of what they actually stole. You mentioned, credit cards are very obvious and why they'd be valuable because you can buy things with it. Social Security because you could potentially open an account with it. Again, everything kind of tied to money. The fact that that they were able to compromise medical diagnosis, referrals, encounter notes, allergies, these kinds of things, they are, I guess, not immediately valuable. Like, you can't turn someone's peanut allergy into money, but it's, I guess, when you mix it with the other information that may already be out there, if whoever has it is able to connect the dots and, I don't know, find your Facebook page or find something else, maybe they can make some calls to some people and, get prescriptions rerouted or something like that. I mean, just general information. Is that something, I guess, you, me, and everybody should be really concerned about? Again, not just financial, credit cards, Social Security, or insurance, or anything like that, but just general information that maybe you'd share on like a Facebook post and be like, hey, just diagnosed with a severe, oak allergy or something like that. I mean, are those things really that valuable to sell on the dark web if they're packaged nicely, I guess, like with a name and that kind of thing?
Sure. They are very valuable. And don't forget the other factor I think that's very important that many people discount quickly or don't even think of. The social media has allowed so much information to be out there that can be used for a social engineering attack against you. So if somebody's trying to gather access to something, it sounds so much more credible when they're using familiar acronyms, people that you know, places that you visit. All of those things break down the barrier to allow people to take it to the next step if they're trying to perform a scam, a hack, a cyber theft of any type of proportion. So we have to be real careful not to continually put out all this detailed information. I often share, and I think I've talked even in the show before, I purposely put out some misleading information from time to time on my social media channels, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can do that. You may get some strange comments from your actual followers and friends and say, hey, I didn't know you were in Fiji recently or this or that, but it makes it kind of interesting because you're mixing it up enough to really confuse a bad guy so they can't follow you. They can't kick in your front door and rob your house because you're actually home. You're not in Fiji or whatever else the case may be.
Yeah, that's and of course I've heard the same thing where other people have gone as far, and I don't know where they find the time, but if you find the time, they go out and make secondary Facebook accounts or whatever accounts, and actually with the same name and the same picture, but with a different job and a different location and a different that place of residence and what have you, and they don't update it every day, but it's just another thing out there that it's that thing that we always say, you don't have to make yourself impenetrable, you just have to make yourself a little bit safer than the person next to you, that kind of thing. So it's definitely good advice. And so speaking of here, they don't know who did this. We probably won't know until, I guess, these show up somewhere for sale, I guess. Is that the way that these are usually identified?
Yeah, typically what will happen is it'll be repackaged to some fashion or merged with another compromise, and somebody buys it. At some point, somebody's going to get a tip-off, and somebody will break the story and report on how it actually happened and how they infiltrated it. Was it an inside job? Was it somebody hacked completely from the outside? So on and so forth. They'll dive into it. Just about all of these. Eventually it happens, but it does take a long time. That's the part that is so difficult. And part of it is because thieves and hackers have gotten really good at covering their trails. Again and again, I see this happening with a breach. They're purposely modifying the malware so it looks like it's from a different author. It's a different strand. It looks like it's originated from a certain country just by certain words that are put into the code. So they're playing a lot of games, hackers, to make it very difficult and throw anyone that comes in to actually do a true assessment and determine where this breach occurred and what the weaknesses were, how did it happen, when did it happen. it makes their job a nightmare, and it takes them 3-4 times as long nowadays to do it because the bad guys are really doing a great job of making it covering their tracks and making it hard.
It just seems crazy to me that this was compromised, and according to the article, this was done by, I guess, well, no, wait, I take it back. That was University of Connecticut Health Center, so we're going to find that out. But then the article also mentions another one where just a few employees, their emails were compromised, probably through, a pretty stereotypical, I guess, kind of email address and a very simple password, and 326,000 patient records were suddenly, addresses and names and things like that were stolen. I mean, it's layers of security. It seems like these institutions, everyone thinks that it's not going to happen to them, and everyone's very reactionary, as we've seen in the past. But I guess just in your professional opinion, and then we'll move on to the next story, but how... will there ever be a point where people don't just say, I'm one company of tens of thousands of companies with valuable data. I won't be the unlucky one today?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I guess this is happening so widespread, and I think all of us, and myself included, we've kind of become a little bit complacent. It's fallen on deaf ears, so we still don't do the things we should be doing with security. But I'm starting to see people change a little bit their patterns. We always talk about, multi-factor authentication. I'm seeing people use that. People see me using it, and they'll ask me about it. A couple of years ago, that's crazy. Now you're seeing it within healthcare centers, and hospitals, and other things. They're actually starting to step up and be more secure because I think the sheer costs are astounding. It's affecting the cost to go into a doctor anymore or a hospital because they're getting affected by all these ransomware attacks and paying these huge ransoms. It's driving up the cost of medical and healthcare, which is already astronomical levels that we're dealing with in this country. Contrast that to other countries, the cost is not that high. Many people are leaving the United States to get procedures in other countries. I have 3 employees here that travel internationally anytime they need surgery, anytime they need to go do major dental work, and they say it pays for their trip the amount of money that they save by not going to a doctor or dentist right here in the States when it becomes more major. So that's concerning. It's only going to get worse when all these attacks for all these healthcare centers and hospitals and doctors continually are facing the onslaught by cyber hackers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard the exact same thing. You go to Tijuana, you get your teeth fixed, and you get a nice little Mexican vacation as well. I've heard that as well. But we're not here to give travel advice. We're here to talk about hacking and cybersecurity. And actually, let's go ahead and kind of skip over to one of your other stories because it's loosely related. Because one took place at a healthcare facility and a hospital. This next one from the Star Tribune, 750,000 Medtronic defibrillators. There we go. Hard word to say. Vulnerable to hacking. And you would think, why would those things really need to be hacked, or who would want to hack those things? And so again, just because it's kind of medicine to medicine, it seems like an industry that's really under the microscope when it comes to cyber threats. What's up with this?
Well, I think the part immediately that stands out to me, here's a life-saving device that's put to good use that can help somebody. And here again, this is not your average everyday hacker that would be exploiting this, I should say, but somebody that's a little bit closer probably to the company, to the access to this, because a lot of these are remote access and they can control a defibrillator. If they want to monkey around and make somebody's life miserable, they could do that. They could read the actual data and get alerts on somebody's heart. How well are they doing? And they cause specific things to happen that will actually affect their health. And these are more focused, targeted threats like a ransomware attack that I'm very concerned about. that if somebody has a defibrillator and somebody wants to target them and say, hey, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to you that could kill you if you don't pay this ransom. That, to me, is what stands out, where the future is going with these focused attacks. And it's probably not, again, your average hacker doing this. This is where you're going to go to a select hacker that has expertise, and in this case with a Medtronic defibrillator and knows the ins and outs and how to communicate and so on and so forth. That's where the concerns are. And often it's the researchers, which I always applaud, that will say, hey, here's some vulnerabilities that we've discovered. And that allows the manufacturer to quickly jump in there and then try to patch that and improve it. But certain devices, when they're inside you, you can't always just update. It's not like you plug a cord in and now you can update the device. That's where people have to think about it. Or you take out a scalpel and cut someone open and yank the device out. That's a concern right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, just kind of poking through the article, this is something that is used to treat a very serious health condition. And you can see that if someone were to get it in their head that they wanted to mess with this device, obviously, you were just talking about the cost of healthcare and treatment and things like that. I mean, this is one of the problems, is that you could open yourself up to all kinds of lawsuits if the software side of your medical device goes on the fritz. And that's something that I guess, medicine hasn't really been about until about 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's been, here's a cast, here's some medicine, here's everything low tech about life. And then now we're coming into the day and age where you're treating people at home over Skype instead of having them come into the doctor's office. You are implanting devices that are sending a wireless signal to your doctor that they can check 24/7. I mean, connected healthcare, as much as, let's say marijuana was for, the up-and-coming industries, connected healthcare is right up there with, just tons of money being spent. I've heard this before. I want your opinion. Is medicine, actually, here we go. Are we ready for connected healthcare? Are we ready, security-wise, for the possibility of someone knowing our location, our physical ailments, potentially messing and altering with our physical bodies? I mean, these are things that are possible now. We even have things that we implant in our body that will actually release medicine and injections by doctor's orders. Security-wise, have we really thought the implications of that through?
No, I don't think they fully have, and I think unfortunately, the medical community is in some ways using us when we're at that point where we're at a doctor or we're at a hospital as a guinea pig in a sense. But then again, I do see some value to this. I saw, I don't know if I mentioned it last time I was on, but not too long ago, it was in the past month or so, I was in the ER. Somebody was there, and they actually rolled in. She looked almost like some type of robot. And I said, what the heck is this? What are you doing? And it wasn't a doctor. It was a nurse that rolled it in, and they said, doctor is going to diagnose the patient here. And it was an ER situation. The particular person had a heart attack, and they needed to determine baseline how the person was doing. And I'm looking at this, and it was a large screen, and you could see the screen that they could see from the camera, and they remotely controlled it. And zoomed in on the patient, and they asked questions, and the cameras would move up and down on the different parts of the body, zoom in on their face, zoom in on their feet. And we had a full, probably 10 to 15-minute interview. I was there alongside the patient, and at the end of it, I said, where are you located? He said, I'm out in San Diego. This was in a hospital in New Jersey, and I started laughing. And he was, dressed in shorts, sitting in his office. And the reason is he was on call, and that telemedicine and that system allows in the ER for immediate access when a doctor is not available in that hospital because he's tied up with another patient in another emergency. So in that particular case, it actually made sense because they were able to make a diagnosis on the spot without waiting a half hour when it may be too late for somebody that was in an ER. Very interesting to see that being used. The scary part is
Yeah.
all the telemetry associated with it, it's easy to pack it.
Yeah, and by the way, that's something that we kind of predicted on some of our other shows. That when we talked about, let's say when the machine came that could do surgeries remotely, the doctor would control the machine, and they could be, anywhere in the world, and they could perform an operation using this robot. And when that came out, we, I guess, kind of ran to the next logical conclusion to that, and it was, hey, we have call centers for tech support. Why don't we have call centers for doctors to do human support? And, to hear your story of, a doctor sitting states away and doing, at least doing the checkup and the baseline and, that kind of thing is one thing. But, hey, give it some time, give it, give the technology some time to mature. And I can almost guarantee there's going to be some kind of call center-esque solution for doctors off-site. That seems reasonable to me, but again, kind of scary. So, hey, and you're more welcome to talk to that. But I did want to get back to this article and saying that the first of the two vulnerabilities of the device. First one was it's sending data, but it's not using any kind of authentication that you may recognize. So anyone with at least access or within 20 feet of the device should be able to intercept that data, and they can then read it and even modify or change device settings, which is a problem because obviously if it's meant to be doing X and you change it to do Y, patient will not be happy. The second one is also you can read the sensitive data streaming out of the device. So both of those together, like you said, it's probably not going to be very concerning because you do have to be like right next to the person. But just connected devices in general just seem to be under it. It seems like everything wrong with the Internet of Things that you've mentioned on the show before is also wrong with the connected medicine devices.
Yeah, yes, and I think if you kind of look even beyond that, a lot of times we say, oh, you got to be close proximity within 20 feet. Why? Maybe it's a Zigbee protocol or Bluetooth or something else where signals can only propagate so far. But then we got to step back and ask ourselves, that was the case a number of years ago with cars being stolen. And what did cyber thieves do? They came up with a eloquent man-in-the-middle attack where they could extend the range where your key fob works to where your actual car is, and it can be hundreds of yards away, and you could steal someone's car by providing some specialty tools in between. So where there's a brick wall you can't hack into something, bad guys will find a backdoor or a workaround. So I think it's always important to realize if there are vulnerabilities or threats, they will exploit them until they can find another way to do it once you put up a wall or a barrier to block them. So it's good because these things are coming to the surface, and it allows, at least in this case, the medical community, researchers, cybersecurity companies, medical manufacturers to take steps to implement more secure systems and decide whether or not it does make sense to have something that's high tech for everything. It's not always the solution. Sometimes that's the worst solution. Low tech actually may be safer. So it's raising the conversation as we're talking about it now, which I think is really important. Yeah.
One of the most secure features of, let's say, the Pentagon, someplace that you would readily associate with being secure, one of their best lines of defenses against cyber threats is the fact that they have this thing called an air gap where, no wireless devices and everything it's protected by armed guards so that anyone looking suspicious holding some kind of computer to connect to the internal network will be captured. But at the same time, no, you're just not allowed to have wireless devices anywhere near the Pentagon. And maybe, hey, an air gap is perfectly reasonable for medical devices. Could be.
Yes.
So there you have it. And Scott, actually, the music, which playing right there, we're going to be right back. So Scott, if you wouldn't mind, stay put. Everyone else out there, thank you so much for tuning in to Computer America. And hey, we'll be right back. More Scott Schober, Berkeley Varitronics, and of course, author of Hacked Again. Everyone, stay tuned. We'll be right back. More Computer America right after this.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
Welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on here. And everyone, hey, how you doing? Welcome back onto the Computer America program. And we're talking with Scott Schober. If you missed any part of our conversation, please, wherever podcasts are heard, you can, of course, hear the Computer America Show. All you have to do is search Computer America and catch this entire episode and all of our episodes. So with that being said, we continue on, Scott Schober, and everyone, you will find links in the show notes to all the stories, our guest website, things like that. But let's go ahead and continue on. So about half the show gone and about 2 stories into our just a number of them. So we're making good time is my point. Why don't we go ahead and move over just a little bit. And this is for Scott. Ars Technica wrote this, and I won't lie. Like, I saw it and I was like, this looks interesting. And then I saw it was like 4 pages long, and I'm like, my attention span is not long enough for that. So if you would, what made you pay attention to the story? And then on top of that, broad strokes, because, this one looks rather like a interesting story.
Yeah, I won't deep tech dive on it. But clearly, it's interesting because it's some young ethical hackers, and they're trying to report and talk about some security flaws within a company and looking for bug bounty, basically. And there was certainly some back and forth, and it ended up into be a kind of a battle. They didn't really agree. And a lot of it talks about when companies do have vulnerabilities that are exposed, how do people go about and report them? How should they be compensated? Should they have active bug bounty programs in place that can help get out these bugs? It's really kind of talking to that point, and I think, again, it brings up that conversation, especially for larger companies. They're plagued with all kinds of problems, so how do they take care of these before the hackers try to actually exploit them? And bug bounties seem to be a very effective way to do this.
Well, and we've heard this before. The one that immediately springs to mind, and you might be able to correct me on this. I think it was Delta. To call a company out, I think it was Delta or United Airlines. It was one of those large airline companies, and they had one where I think they had a bug bounty program in place, and a gentleman was able to hack into the the plane's computer, and I don't think he could really do anything to really, bring down the plane or something like that, but he could at least overhear the pilots, and he could see the data coming from the instruments and things like that, all through the onboard entertainment system that are found on many planes nowadays. And he filmed it, he reported it, he did a full write-up, and when he reported it, I'm pretty sure this airline actually said that we're going to take you to court. How dare you hack our system? We are going to sue you for, hacking into our plane. And, that kicked off a single white hat hacker, and he did identify himself as a white hat hacker, a single white hat hacker against a multinational corporation, which is not where you want to be in terms of legal fees. Yeah, we've seen companies, kind of just go the 180 and say, we're not going to pay it. We can beat you in court, and we can make the whole thing go away. That's not the best way because, hey, it's in my mind, so that doesn't seem to be a good way to handle it.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about notorious alleged hacker Chris Roberts, and he was reporting and has done tons of research. He's actually a really cool guy. I actually interviewed him on my little show video.
I see that, June 27th, 2018, yeah.
Yeah, and he is one interesting guy, brilliant, and he exposed some actual vulnerabilities in the airline industry, and you're exactly right. Connected through the infotainment center or system on airplanes, there's allegedly, in certain cases, some connections to the avionics, and he basically looked at the data streams and the paths of data going in and out, and potentially could cause a lot of problems, and was met when the plane landed by some air marshals, I guess, and they grabbed him and took him in the back room, and he got in some serious trouble, I think, and banned from flying for a while, and it affected his career and so on and so forth. But he does provide a ton of education. He's a regular speaker at RSA, which I've spoken at, and Black Hat, some of these other hacker events, and great guy.
But yeah, and of course, someone who is as high profile as that within the cybersecurity community, you can see where even if someone like that gets in trouble, how does someone who, and like the story I was poking through it a little bit, it's like a 23-year-old and like a 17-year-old, and it's this this whole thing. I mean, how do you kind of go about saying, hey, we can help you, but we would like to be compensated? Because, hey, in a lot of these cases, they are found by full-fledged cybersecurity firms, people who employ people and, have bills to pay. Yeah,
and I think it's important for companies to carefully outline their bug bounty programs and properly document them. Well, there are many companies out there that when a bug is brought to them, they quickly cover it up, never communicate again with the ethical hacker or the white hat that brought it to their attention, and try not to let the media get a hold of it because of the damage that can cause, and then hopefully they figure, well, we'll patch it and no one will find out about it. And that's not a good thing to do, because hackers will call them out and let them have it, and it'll become larger than life. Look what happened with Uber when they misrepresented and called something a bug bounty when it wasn't properly a bug bounty. That it was devastating. It probably cost the company millions of dollars that are very hard to attribute to anything other than the fact that they just outright lied and disguised something. So it's dangerous. It has to be properly handled by a department, and I think at the same time they need to properly compensate somebody that does bring it. If they play by the rules, you got to play by your rules and pay them, because that's how they make their living.
There have been situations where, and really the big ones, I can think of two right off the top of my head. The first one was Intel vulnerabilities with, I keep on saying Afterburn, but it was like a ghosting thing, and it was like another one. I'm sure that you know it. And So there was the Intel one, and then there was the one with the routers with the WPA security flaw, and affected like every router on the market, and every router that was sold in like the past 20 years, it affected those too. So those were published in full-blown articles and scientific journals and things like that. So when they're big enough, I think they just get the publicity anyways, but not everything affects every router, forever. So yeah, I completely agree with you. I think catching the bug and paying someone, a reasonable bounty saves you the headache and the time, and with proper documentation is a good thing. So
yeah,
good conversation to have.
Important. I look at it, I'll contrast it maybe as a business owner for our company providing wireless threat detection tools. We have a component that's our software, and will we have bugs from time to time that surface? Absolutely, especially as a small company. And our rule of thumb is basically if someone identifies and documents the bug and informs us, we will fix it for free and take care of it. And then anybody that has the software, that they purchased it from any point in time, they get that upgraded at no charge as well. Do we pay an actual bug bounty? No, we don't have any specific plan, but we take care of them in other ways. But that's not our core business. But I could see larger companies, you got to do something. You really need a plan in place.
One of my favorites is, of course, I think Apple and really Google's has almost become the industry standard for large companies for bug bounties, where depending on just how in-depth the vulnerability is, because there's things like where you can see usernames but you don't get any passwords or personal information, or you can actually get into the accounts of users without their knowledge, and like there are different thresholds that each one has to make, and it goes from anywhere from like, oh hey, you can change elements of the website so you get $1,000, and it goes all the way up to like I think $100,000 if you're able to actually compromise data and document it properly, and that's a huge important part. I mean, really, tiers make sense, and but again, the whole point is ethical hackers. They serve a really good purpose, and hey, I think a lot of companies out there really employ them. So it's
it is a very good thing. I think it also helps the company, Apple, Google, anyone else, if they're getting a lot of these bug bounties and paying out a lot of money, they may not be so fast to release their next version of software without properly testing it and debugging it. So it helps people not to push junk out on the market too fast without vetting it first. So I think that's an important part of any security, especially when it starts to tie into the health or autonomous cars or whatever else, as we see the future expand in technology and it can actually affect our lives more and more. Hey, they better get it right the first time.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of getting it right the first time, why don't we go ahead and move on over to I don't know, this one's close, but we did not mention anything about FEMA. So this happened a couple of days ago, and, through the weekend and guests that we had on the show, it just wasn't able to come up on the program, so I'm happy that you included it with your notes. And FEMA data breach exposed 2.3 million wildfire hurricane victims to identity theft. And these are people who obviously have gone through some kind of great hardship, be it through natural disaster, and people who, they really don't need this kinds of information leaving the system. But FEMA, you can imagine just the database that they would have on victims, and the fact that they have to pay people. They would keep all kinds of information. What did FEMA lose? Do we know anything about how this happened? And just tell us about FEMA.
Well, again, here, kind of as you pointed out, the part that really stood out to me is here you have these poor victims that suffered, be it fire, hurricanes, the worst atrocities in your life that turns your world upside down, only to find out sometime in the not-too-distant future, oh, by the way, a breach occurred and we let out more information about you than we ever should have, And as they dug in deeper, I guess, it wasn't FEMA directly, it was one of FEMA's contractors. And this is a reoccurring thing that we hear again and again. When you have a third-party vendor that works close to you, you're only secure and strong as your vendors that you work with. So bad on FEMA, maybe they didn't do their due diligence, or maybe there was just a weakness there within the contractor, who knows. But that's where it they dropped the ball there and had access to this information. And FEMA does have small amounts of information that they can share, of course, when they're fulfilling payment claims and different things like that. But when it goes beyond that and more information gets out there, that's really concerning. And to this extent, I think it was, 2.3 million accounts were compromised in this case. So it was a huge number on top of that, which is it's just concerning. I think it's just really concerning when you try to keep your personal and private information private, when you have property damage and everything that's so devastating. Maybe the last thing that you do have is, you remember your Social Security number, you have some personal information and things. Now the bad guys are going to go after you for identity fraud and everything else to really ruin your life. It's just not right.
It certainly is horrible, and again, according to the article, to me, to blame the contractor seems like a really easy cop-out for FEMA, because they provided the information that they didn't need to the contractor, and the contractor really didn't feel the need to sanitize the information that they were receiving from FEMA. So FEMA shouldn't have been sending it, but the contractor shouldn't have continued to make the same mistake on down the chain. But looks like they've corrected it. And yeah, if anyone out there has been dealing with FEMA, 2.3 million people and families have been dealing with this. So maybe one of our listeners, they unfortunately compromised. Let's see, they had here names, birth dates, last four digits was what they're supposed to give, and what they ended up giving were home addresses, bank names, and bank transfer and transit numbers. So keep an eye on your bank accounts. Those are the important numbers. So okay, there you go. FEMA, unfortunate, and hopefully that whole situation has been kind of helped FEMA realize that they could do better. So there you go. There's that one. Oh yeah. So with that being said, we have time for one more, and then I wanted to talk to you about this conference you're going to be going to in a little bit. But we have time for one more story, and I wanted to, and actually we can. Let's go ahead and talk about this one from Cybersecurity Ventures. By the way, I've really liked this publication since you kind of turned me onto it, a couple of months ago. But Cybersecurity Ventures and Black Hat employees fuel multi-billion-dollar market for UAM solutions. So you're gonna have to explain what UAM is for anyone out there who does not know what a black hat employee is. Black hat would be those who work. Think of everyone who's stealing these names and credit card numbers, and those who are trading in stolen goods. Those are the black. Those are the bad guys of the cyber world, whereas the white hat hackers are those trying to bring awareness to issues. So there's that one. I'll let you kind of take it from there, Scott.
Yeah, I think a lot of this stuff is kind of interesting. It's really the overall gist of this article is talking about insider threats. And within companies, we have, if you're a business owner, you have trusted staff that you can count on to do the day-to-day thing. And I think the spin on this is you hear of an insider threat that they could do something wrong and steal something financially, this or that. And I came across this term of black hat employees, which gave it an interesting spin, I thought. It's kind of a new term that I think Cybersecurity Ventures really coined, and I said that with them, and then they happened to quote me in the article, which I thought was kind of wonderful, I think, just to kind of caught my ear, so I'm hoping it catches a few other people's ears as well. But it helps you to see that how close you need to look at the possible threats of employees within your organization, not people that are just going to steal sugar and extra
and pens, yeah.
roll of toilet paper or pens or things like that. But now we're talking about people that are actually getting into your computer networks and hacking and stealing and compromising information. It really borders the line more of what I would call espionage, where somebody could be planted, because we often think of a black hat hacker as somebody that's remote. They're a distance, and they're trying to hack into the computer networks of IBM or some big corporation and get in there and then work laterally and steal more information, collect stuff, and then get the heck out. Now imagine it's happening from the inside, and then they're collecting information, and since they work for the company, they're collecting a paycheck. So you're paying an employee that's actually there trying to destroy your company, steal information, and probably sell it for monetary gain, be it intellectual property or compromised customer information or, whatever your secret sauce is. Who knows? But it's kind of a whole new dynamic that starts to come into play. And this article nicely, I thought, touched on some of the different statistics, and not just where we are now, but the predictions of where we're going to be in the not-too-distant future. And that's what I think Cybersecurity Ventures does a nice job at, packaging it up so you can kind of digest it and understand how costly some of this stuff is. Because a lot of people say, well, these problems are terrible or they're really bad. Well, how bad? Can you put a number on it?
Yeah, and by the way, some of these statistics, they are really alarming, such as this one where I would think it'd be a lot lower, where 28% of all cyber attacks are launched by someone on the inside. And again, that's not counting people who clicked on a wrong link or opened the wrong file or things like that. No, not just unwitting insiders, but knowledgeable insiders. That's and really, when you think about how large these organizations are, Scott, I don't know if you checked out that article 2 or 3 days ago about the gentleman who stole $122 million from Facebook and Google. Did you happen to catch that one?
I heard a little bit about it, yes.
Yeah, that one was for anyone out there who, didn't catch yesterday's show where we talked about it. Essentially, he was posing as a contractor. He was sending them invoices saying, hey, we provided this piece of hardware to you and for Facebook and Google, and their accounting team just wrote the checks, and off and away $122 million went. That would be, of course, that's someone posing as someone from the inside, but it's someone who knows how the corporate structure works and then just kind of tweaks it for their own advantage. These companies are so big, you can see where different departments never talk to each other, and no one would ever raise an alarm if someone from I don't know, accounting was poking around on a computer. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, and it really goes to your point earlier when we were chatting about social engineering and putting too much information out there on Facebook and all these other platforms. When somebody bad on the inside or the outside really wants to exploit something or penetrate into a company's networks, they can use all this information effectively to convince the other person. I had somebody recently, and this is no joke, they reached out to me. I don't really know them. I never met them. And they said, could you send over your company structure and your key employees and their contact information? And I said, no. And they wrote back, well, why not? And I said, why would I? Why would anybody do that and share that the stuff or the inside of your company and their contacts and their position and their expertise? That to me sounded like the most dangerous I could ever put out there.
That's exactly what's led to that, again, the $122 million being stolen. He was making fake emails, and you know how easy it is to make an email appear to come from a different email address, but he was faking emails from executives who he had their email addresses. Many C-level executives have their emails plastered all over the internet so that you can well, contact them and do business with them. And yeah, he was forging emails and names and entire conversations just to get the people in accounting to believe he was who he was. And I can see where if you were to send, your key employees, they could do the exact same thing to you.
Yeah, it's scary. And I think what the interesting part about this article really that the standout is there's some new things that are actually developing within corporations. It's the importance of monitoring actively all users on your computer networks, and that's the term, I think you mentioned it before, UAM, user activity monitoring. Mm-hmm. There's a whole breed of solutions that are coming out there, excuse me, that companies are providing so you can effectively monitor your employees to make sure that if they have privileged access to a certain area, that they stay there and they don't give anybody else access to that. Information isn't pulled out of there. So all of these things now come into play when you properly look at keeping a company secure from a cybersecurity standpoint. It's yet another layer that needs to be considered in your plan, and I think they have an interview in here as well with the CEO of Ekrin Systems. Mm-hmm. Talks a little more about this in detail there, but staggering that a lot of the stuff isn't even discussed. If you go out there on the internet, do some searches, you'll find this is a hot growing area, that additional layer that needs to be considered when you're trying to secure a company.
Yeah, and not to toot our own horn, well, actually, to do exactly that, this past Monday, we had an interview with a company called Nominet, and they are a DNS provider, and they came on the show to really highlight the fact that, businesses and corporations and small, medium businesses don't ever think about the vulnerabilities of DNS and DNS rerouting and things like that. So there are more vectors than you know, and at the same time, you need to be careful as you possibly can. And hey, no one's ever going to get it 100% right 100% of the time. But hey, just by listening to the show, I promise you are better prepared than most people. But with that being said, Scott, there's like 2 or 3 minutes left, and I wanted to give you a chance. FutureCon, love the name, I love the future. Cybersecurity Conference headquarters. What is happening in New Jersey?
It's going to exciting conference that's coming up April 17th down in Princeton, Forrestal Village, and I was asked if I could give the keynote speech there. And FutureCon is kind of an exciting conference, and they're nice. They're niche conferences in major cities that are spread out, and they really are targeting senior executives and chief information security officers. That's the primary audience. It's nice and focused, and it helps them learn how can they fight back, how can they mitigate cyber attacks, identify vulnerabilities, keeping their companies safe. So I'm kind of really excited to have a chance there to meet everybody and do a kickoff there with the keynote and hopefully learn a lot at this event as well.
That is awesome to hear. And of course, this, well, actually, I should ask, is this open to the public? Is this just for invitation, just for, I guess, kind of industry insiders?
Yeah, it does have some focus, but certainly people can go on there. It's, I think, futureconevents.com, and then they can go through the registration process to make sure that they are qualified to go in. And I think there's some tabletop exhibits as well, so that there's different parts that they can actually attend some of the actual presentations as well as see some of the vendors and things that they actually offer in the world of cybersecurity. But it's been a great show, and I've heard a lot of buzz about it from other cyber security colleagues there, so it's worth checking out, and I'm kind of excited to go to it. So if you're in New Jersey, please take a look at the website there and register and swing on by, and love to chat with you.
All right, perfect. And so there you have it. We'll include a link to that in the show notes as well as all the other articles that we mentioned. And of course, we should probably just wrap up and say, Scott, any last... Oh, wow, that music played really suddenly and really loudly. Sorry about that. Let's turn that way down. And Scott, anything else you want to mention? Last word before we say goodbye for the day?
I want to tell everybody to stay safe, and if they have any questions, you can reach out to scottschober.com. Be happy to answer. Thanks.
All right. Perfect. And of course, as always, link in the show notes. Scott, I want to thank you so much. You are, of course, our chief cybersecurity expert here on Computer America, and we appreciate your input. Thanks for coming on the show.
Anytime. Thanks again.
All right, have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, everyone, and there you go. So obviously, if you would like to check out anything that anything that we talked about here today, computeramerica.com. Always fun, and of course, check out the podcast. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you next time, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern. See you then.